One candidate who would not be interested in pursuing the vast majority of these policy proposals is Nikki Haley, who kind of pulled a fast one yesterday, although it's not entirely surprising that some members of our wise and just sagacious media were easily duped by a political candidate. Let's take a look at Nikki Haley's speech yesterday, where a lot of people in the press actually thought, because she's called for this speech in the middle of the day, meant she was dropping out of the South Carolina primary, which is set to happen this Saturday. Let's take a listen to what Nikki Haley said.
In a general election, you're given a choice. In a primary, you make your choice. Make sure you make the right choice. Make your voices heard today, tomorrow, and on Saturday. Some of you, perhaps a few of you in the media, came here today to see if I'm dropping out of the race. Well, I'm not. Far from it, and I'm here to tell you why. I'm running for president because we have a country to save.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't know that. So Nikki Haley also, though, let's put this graphic up on the screen. While Nikki Haley claims that people just need a choice, this USA Today poll from her own home state, take a look at this. If you're listening and can't see this on the screen, Donald Trump, according to this new USA Today poll, is up 63% to Nikki Haley's 35% in South Carolina, just absolutely getting trounced in her home state. They both have net favorable ratings, according to the Suffolk University USA Today poll. That's actually kind of an interesting point from this. He's more popular, though. So while both of them have a favorable rating among Republican primary voters, and this poll, the numbers we just showed, are among very likely primary voters, which is different than how a lot of polls will find likely voters. Very likely is it could depart from the finals, based on people who actually end up coming out. But very likely to vote in the state's Republican primary. She's trailing 2-1. Trump is at 64% popularity. She's at 47% popularity among primary voters, which is another really interesting point. So while just about half of voters find her favorable, Republican primary voters, very likely Republican primary voters, he's at 64%. She holds a wide lead, according to USA Today, like she did in other states, among those, quote, who identify themselves as liberals or moderates. She's up 59% to 38%, and she has a narrow lead among those who are voting in the GOP primary for the first time, so probably a similar demo. That would be a lead of 51 to 49%, surely within the margin of error. In this poll, she has her biggest advantage over Trump, 63 to 37%. Quote, among those who say the most important issue is the future of democracy. For them on Saturday, only 13% of those surveyed say democracy is their biggest concern, though. Ranked at top was immigration and border security. That was at 42%. Some more on why Nikki Haley is actually running for president, despite what she said about people desperately needing a choice. Let's put this next element up on the screen. This is some more plans. This is from Steve Peoples of the Associated Press. He reported that Nikki Haley and her campaign are dropping more than $500,000 on a new TV ad that is set to begin running in Michigan on Wednesday. So in Michigan, South Carolina is on Saturday. She's running ads in Michigan starting on Wednesday. Her post-South Carolina travel schedule features 10 high-dollar fundraising events as part of a 7-day campaign swing across Michigan, Minnesota, Colorado, Utah, Virginia, Washington, D.C., North Carolina, and Massachusetts. She said she's not leaving the primary, even if she's blown out on Saturday. She vowed to stay in the fight, according to Peoples, against Donald Trump, at least until after Super Tuesday, if not longer. So, Krystal, I think that tells you everything you need to know about the Haley candidacy at this point, which is attempting to, I think, let's say, help Nikki Haley's brand among the sort of never Trump elite media donor class, who will now see her as their last best hope, maybe shower her in some money so that she can make a stand, get her numbers up on Super Tuesday. She's certainly not going to win South Carolina. She's not going to, even if she won South Carolina, she would not be able to win the Republican primary mathematically. It might give her some momentum going into Super Tuesday, but even then, the polls would have to change changed dramatically for her to mathematically have any path to Republican nomination. So I'm curious if you agree with me, Krystal, that at this point she's just kind of running a campaign for the elite media kind of virtue signaling crowd.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. You know, early on, I had actually predicted that she may, excuse me, hang around in this race in spite of the fact that it's increasingly humiliating. I mean, to lose to Donald Trump probably by a margin of 2-1 in your home state, even in a place where, you know, you're still pretty popular and where you govern in a very conservative way, like that is incredibly humiliating. But I thought she might hang around for two reasons. The one is the one you laid out, which is, you know, to secure her brand and potential like either corporate or media gigs moving forward. Or two, with the thought of, hey, he's got all these criminal cases hanging out there. Maybe something happens before the Republican nominating convention. And then I'm the one who's, you know, there still in the race and has, you know, potentially picked up some delegates. And I've got the inside track then to pick up the pieces if some black swan event occurs and Donald Trump is no longer in the race and there's an opening for that. I mean, I think that's why donors continue to give to her. I think that's a big part of it, just to have that sort of option open. Although I have to say, I'm not sure that really would work out, even if, you know, something crazy did happen and Donald Trump dropped out of the race. Like, it's not clear to me that she would be, just by merit of the fact that she's still hanging out, getting embarrassed in state after state, that she would be the person that would be the go-to if, you know, that eventuality was to come to pass. So I can't say I totally understand it at this point, which is why so many in the media were like, she must be dropping out, right? Because this just doesn't really make sense anymore. But nope, not only is she not dropping out, she is proceeding on and spending money and doing fundraisers, which I think is kind of like the key part of her quote unquote campaign at this point. I do want to say, I mean, I just think that the Nikki Haley, that she has become viewed as this sort of like liberal or moderate or whatever within the Republican primary. It just shows you how the whole of our politics, really on the Republican and the Democratic side, has just become defined by Donald Trump. And so even though on a lot of issues, she's at least as conservative as Trump, perhaps more conservative than Trump, and governed in a very, you know, traditional right-wing kind of a way when she was governor of South Carolina. Just the fact that she'll say anything, even moderately critical of Trump, makes her read as like this resistance lib. And not just on the Republican side, you know, but also, you know, that's why she would have this media career. And we've seen this trajectory a million times, from like the rehabbing of George W. Bush to Nicole Wallace having an MSNBC show and all of these things. Your position on Donald Trump is like the totality of how you end up getting defined and viewed in the political sphere at this point, which is one of the more, one of the things that I have found most distressing about the Trump era and been most frustrated with in the Trump era, because it just means any sort of like real policy considerations just don't even exist. It's just all about how do you feel about this one person.
You forgot Resistance Lib John Bolton, Bill Krystal, we can add to the list, just stalwarts of progressivism at this point.
Yeah.
You said something so interesting about how it's like obviously humiliating for Nikki Haley with like the vast majority of the country. And I think that's a great point. I mean, getting trounced in your home state, which you really staked out as an important part of your campaign. And then, you know, apparently being down by 30 points heading into election week. What's interesting about that is Nikki Haley doesn't care about the demographic that is going to find this embarrassing. She cares, to your point, Krystal, about establishing herself as the heir apparent, the kind of Republican establishment's heir apparent to Donald Trump. And you can do that by continuing to like make this brave stand with donors, so the donor class, and people in the media, like the Morning Joe sect. And the last point I want to make, Krystal, is that is so true. She did govern, and Jacobin has actually had some really good coverage. Branko over there has had some good coverage of Nikki Haley's policy record. She did really govern as a traditional conservative, and by that I mean a crony capitalist who was showering Boeing in tax breaks and subsidies, and then obviously, as everyone knows from your guys' excellent coverage, jumped on over to their board. That's as traditional conservative as it gets, unfortunately, Krystal.
Yeah, well, it's not like Trump doesn't do that same crap, you know.
They all do it.
Yeah, so it's not like she's different from him on that issue. Obviously, he passed a very traditional tax cut for corporations and rich people, authored effectively by like Paul Ryan as his major act in office. So, you know, the thing with Nikki though at this point that still doesn't even really make sense to me is I don't even think the Morning Joe people really like her either, because she was part of the Trump administration. I mean, she was licking this guy's boots up until 3 minutes ago, and still is very, very tempered in her criticism of him. It's not like she went full Chris Christie. And even with Chris Christie, because he hung with Trump for so long, even among the resistance libs, there's still a lot of skepticism of him. So even in the lane of like, let me position myself for my like resistance lib media gig post campaign, like I'm not really sure that she's even accomplishing that. So I don't know. The best I can figure is the donors want her in, and she's willing to take the humiliation because they're her, you know, meal ticket after this embarrassing campaign is over. And they just want her there as like a potential option in case in the 1% chance that something crazy happens, and maybe that gives her an inside lane. Maybe it doesn't, but at least they've got like an option on the table. That's the best that I can do to make sense of what she's doing at this point.
Yeah, she's trying to impress them and people in the suburbs so that she can point and say that she's a viable candidate in the post-Trump Republican Party. It may be that she's more palatable than a lot of people, like a Doug Mastriano in the post-Trump Republican Party, but she's looking for ways to point to that. But of course, when we saw in Iowa, she even got trounced in the suburbs. She even got trounced in areas that, were less affluent and more affluent. She won one college town county. So that argument for Nikki Haley, I'm curious if she becomes more Christie-esque after the South Carolina primary, and if, you know, in order to stanch some of the bleeding in South Carolina, she's continued to be a little bit tempered in her criticism of Trump, and then after the South Carolina primary, it stakes out a position that's more similar to Chris Christie. I think that would make sense because she knows she's not going to win any of these races. So we'll see, Krystal, about that. Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.